District Board meeting for March 10th, 2025 to order. It is 5:30 and we're at City Hall. Any additions or deletions to the agenda, Director Higlin?
No changes.
Changes to the agenda. Now I'll open the public communication from visitors. There's two people in our audience. They're both here to speak about agenda items, so we will close the public communication. First up on our agenda is minutes. Seeking approval or comment and correction on February 10th regular meeting minutes.
I'll make the approval of the minutes from the February 10th, 2025 meeting.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Mutter and a second from Commissioner Scott to approve the regular meeting minutes as presented. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting minutes are approved. Agenda item number 1, a request from Mandan Public Schools to partner on a grant application.
So commissioners, just kind of a background on the information is that we had met back in December with Dr. Ritteraff, President Meschke was present, and then along with Perry Just to kind of talk about an opportunity that the school district would be looking at for applying for a grant. With that grant, obviously, is a request for the park district to partner with a potential splash pad. Obviously, the funding is going to be dictating what that amount would include or not include, depending on how the funding would come out of that. At that time, we talked about the Ferris Field site is what Dr. Ritteraff is going to present to you here, and it's in your packet, a picture of the location where the splash pad would go. The building to the north that we mentioned is owned by the school district, would be renovated into the early childhood lab. And I guess with that, I will let Dr. Ritteraff kind of just talk about what that grant's going to entail, who's going to benefit from the kids, and then any questions with the splash pad.
Thank you very much. As Director Higlin said, I'm Carly Ritteraff. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Mandan Public Schools. So just to give you a little history on where this Play Lab concept comes from, we started a program called Mandan Little Learners about 4 years ago, and it came out of a large statewide literacy grant. And the approach that Mandan took with that was really a community-infused approach of how do we infuse different activities and different opportunities for caregivers and their children to have those early childhood experiences within our community. And we hired an individual by the name of Janet Bassingwaite, who's done phenomenal work with it. One of our biggest partners has been the library. We run something called Spark Hour there on Wednesdays, morning and afternoon, just an example of how that's grown. Think of Spark as like story time on steroids. You do some stories, but then there's all sorts of different activities designed for children and their caregivers to participate in together. That went from, I took my daughter to the very first one 4 years ago, and there was a handful of people there. Last Wednesday, she had 60 kids and 40 plus caregivers, and has really started to outgrow that library space. The library has been a phenomenal partner and will continue to be for us. But really they have their own programming they need to do, and really needing some dedicated space. She's done some family play groups with the University of Mary. There's all sorts of things that I could stand up here and talk about with it. So we've really seen it explode. And one of the benefits we've seen of that is our incoming kindergartners. We have something called the MAP test that we give students. It's basic, their ELA and their math test scores. Our kindergarten students, before we've even worked with them, have grown over 10 points on that in the last 4 years. And we really feel like this programming is a large component to that. So like I said, it's exploded big time for us. And another piece of that has formed is called the Early Childhood Coalition. So it's a group of about 15 partners, and it's in my proposal, in the community that come together to prepare these activities to work with families. I think, as a park board, anytime we can break down silos and work collectively is always a good thing. And that's been a huge plus of this programming, is some of that work that has been done there. So then fast forward to this fall, Essentia approached us about just in general wanting to partner with Mandan Public Schools, looking to forge a partnership and what made sense. And one of the things that came up was early childhood. That's one of their big missions, and the medical field would be early interventions, getting to families, early health things. And so we started having conversations about what could that look like for us and expanding our early childhood programming. And they have a large community grant fund that you can apply for various things. They've done small, like 5K races, those sorts of sponsorships, up to $1 million family wellness type facilities and kind of everything in between. And through those conversations, that's where this Play Lab concept was really born, through that Early Learning Coalition and Mandan Little Learners, with the idea that we really need a community space that we can run these programs out of in a very intentional way. Library would continue to be a partner with us in that and work together on that. So we identified internally that print shop, as Director Higland referenced, the old Ferris Field locker rooms, as a potential site for us. With us building the new high school, we're moving our print shop and our shipping and receiving to the Brave Center, and so that building will not be in use for us anymore. But it's still in pretty good shape. It's about 20 years old only, and wouldn't require a ton of remodeling to make it useful for us. The big lift there for us would be tearing down that warehouse and putting in a parking lot. And then on the south side of that, and that the aerial piece will show, our big dream for it is to have an outdoor play space, and that's where the splash pad got brought up. We really love the location of this. We feel like it would hit a demographic of families and of young ones that we really want to engage with, and it could be a really nice community addition, especially with all the work you've done down there with the softball fields and the baseball field, that it could all kind of flow together nicely in theory. Our ask from you right now is just to continue to have conversations with us and to continue to hopefully partner. Our goal, we're asking big with this grant. Our goal is quite a bit with Essentia. I'm hoping to be able to come back to you and say, I have enough money, we have enough money with this grant to do a splash pad. How can we work together? Director Higland and I have talked about possible other grant funding that we could maybe braid together if we got this money. I do think long term we could talk about things like staffing and how do we maybe share some staff. We've had some conversations about, I know MAC is a huge thing that as far as staffing and space, and so I think there's potential things that we could build from here. But right now I'm just asking for some support, and if you would partner with us on this. Our intent with it is, if we do get it built, Parks and Rec own it, maintain it. We would not own the splash pad. That would be all you guys. It would just be a collaborative partnership on getting it built and then sharing some of the resources there. So with that, I wanted to keep it brief. I know there's a ton of information in there, but just kind of give you a 30,000-foot view of it. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Dr. Ritterath. Board have any comments for her or questions?
One of the questions I have is like a playground. We're talking about splash pad, but if we have kids down there and stuff, are we talking about playground for them or whatever? And also, if we're doing a splash pad, and I know I already asked Cole a question about it, but restrooms or something like that, how is that going to? And I'm getting a little bit probably more details than what we need to be, but ask.
No, I appreciate that, Commissioner. We had a couple conversations. I'll be quite honest, it depends on how much money we get. A lot of it. If we get the full amount and we can maybe braid together some grant funding, I would love to see something similar to New Generation Park in Bismarck, where you have splash pad, playground, and something almost like you have at Eagles, some sort of shelter that people could rent out. To me, that would be the pie in the sky. Now, depending on funding, maybe we step it back to a playground, because maybe that's what makes sense for us. We did talk about when we renovate our building, the potential of putting an outdoor door so that there could be access to just the bathroom component of the play lab for the playground space or the splash pad, that we could possibly have some dual use of that space depending on need.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cole, I got one more real quick question for you. Is that if we do build a splash pad, can we cover the expenses of a splash pad without raising property taxes?
Yeah, I think some of the expenses associated with maintaining a splash pad, the staffing's going to be the same, so that labor is not going to go away. We'll just have to add to the duties responsibilities. As far as the chlorine, water usage and things, there are different types of splash pads that you can buy that have different expenses associated with it. You have some that recuperate the water and they keep circulating it, or you have fresh water that comes in all the time, which is less intrusive but bigger expense in water. So I think those things can be evaluated as we go. The only thing I wanted to add was that we do have a southwest master plan of that complex that we've been working towards, and so the $5 million the Mandan Baseball Club gave included the renovations of Diamonds 9 through 12, but on that master plan, there was a playground splash park discussed at that time. So this is why it kind of ties in. And then I mentioned to Commissioner Mutter with his comments this morning, there is a splash pad being proposed by the shores of Lakewood south of hole number 4 at Prairie West, which would be private. So that would be an HOA private splash pad if it was to get developed as it's been proposed. I like the idea of this one being on the west side of town, obviously the town of the area, kids walking access. Just kind of covers an area where we haven't done a lot of improvements in that area of town other than baseball and softball fields.
Then I'm going to ask one more question. Then I'll promise I'll be done then. Do we know how many kids are in that area and any projection of how many kids are going to be in that area?
Off the top of my head, I don't, but we are 1 block from Head Start in that spot, and we're about 2.5 blocks from Mary Stark Elementary. So we feel really comfortable, or we're really excited about the demographics and the families that we could potentially engage with the locations of those two schools and those buildings, and making it walkable for some of our families that maybe don't have means to have transportation or to get to some things. One of the components of the Play Lab is we're hoping to partner to do some therapeutic things and some other community resources, so to kind of bring it to families so that they can walk over and access those resources. That's part of the reason the library is real interested as well, is there's a section of that building we'd make a little satellite library, actually, because they really struggle to get families up to the library that are on that side of the tracks. So we're hoping to kind of make it community focused in that sense.
Thank you.
Yep.
Vice President Melhoff, what's the name? I forget, I should know the name of the program, but where we offer the free lunches in the summer down there? And we
Yeah.
that would be a great area to tie that in with.
That would-
Through 21st century? Or is that?
I believe it's 21st century. Don't quote me on that, but yes, that would be Mary Stark is already a site for us, so to be able to have that and then have the splash pad and have those pieces would be a great fit.
Yeah, I think it's a neat use of that property. It's kind of tucked back in there, but we've been talking about splash pads for years and years, and downtown or where do you put it? But to your point, you're serving a certain demographic, and people aren't always willing to travel north of the tracks, and with baseball right there and hot summer tournaments and all that, makes a lot of sense to me. So I'm excited to see something down on this property.
I would agree with that, and to go along with some early childhood development going along with it, I think that's critical for our school system too.
Absolutely. And we've committed to the staffing piece of the early childhood to maintain, because we're actually losing the grant that's paying for the staffing of this right now for Mandan Little Learners, and we've seen such a positive impact for that we are choosing to continue to maintain that, because it's too valuable for us not to.
I'll recommend approval to apply for the grant with Mandan Public School for Play Lab and Splash Pad with no financial commitment at this time.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Mutter and a second from Commissioner Scott to approve the partnership on the grant application with Mandan Public Schools. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Scott?
Aye.
Commissioner Mutter?
Aye.
I'm also aye. Motion carries.
Thank you for your
Dr.
time.
Ritter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, item number 2, we have Dakota Star Gymnastics 2024 year in review, and with us is Mr. Joel Williams.
Hi, I'm Joel Williams. I'm a little new at this, so I was kind of overnight said I had to be here.
Thanks for coming. I guess if you want to introduce him, Dave, talk about
Yeah,
why he's
so-
here today.
Every year, Dakota Star Gymnastics presents their basically year in review because they lease the space up at Star and Sports Complex, and usually the general manager comes and just breaks down the numbers, breaks down the revenue over expenditures and things like that. So they just that's basically all we need to talk about today, and just kind of how it's going up there. And anything you see in the future that's coming up and what your numbers look like and your coaches and things like that. So if you could just kind of just talk about what's going on for Dakota Star. So welcome, Joel.
I guess the recreational numbers are 485 gymnasts in January to 482 gymnasts in December 2024. 70 classes. There was a new ninja class began in January. That's a pretty huge hit. 166 kids on the wait list for the new ninja class too. On top of that, competitive numbers. There's 23 competitive gymnasts. 20 pre-team gymnasts working on moving up to competitive as we speak. What else you got here? More classes, more income for the gym. We've been doing a lot of cash raffles, cartwheel-a-thon. That'll be coming up too, just to gain a little bit of interest. We plan on doing more camps. With those tied in there, we're trying to get out of not so many of these little fundraisers to take up time and resources.
And how many meets do you guys host every year at for the club?
Four.
Four
Yeah.
club meets. Does
Yeah.
that include high school too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's basically the season is basically December through March.
That's right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Moving into 2025, I mean, the direction you guys are going with the staffing, are you guys have that kind of worked out for, are you guys hiring a new general manager type thing?
Well, we're still kind of on awe with that. We don't know if we should just do office personnel and kind of intertwine it for the amount of staff that we actually have.
Okay.
But it's still / general manager. So we're still talking about it, and we're not 100% sure exactly where to go long-term with it.
So right now, the board's just picking up the duties
Yes.
of the general
Yep.
manager right now
Yes.
until you guys decide.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just so the board has a little background, the general manager resigned, and so they're just kind of looking at a different direction right now. Lori Lochner was the general manager, and then the board has picked up some of their duties, and Mackenzie Swallow is still the coach. She's still a coach in there for the high school and for the club. But as they transition, I'll just keep you up to speed on how that goes. So, does anybody have any questions for Joel?
Joel, I might put you on the spot, and I don't mean to, but can you explain the new ninja classes for us?
Well, it's, I guess the way we have it set up is there's like a certain fee that you pay right up front. And then there's another fee every month that you paid for. I guess they work with everything that we have in our entire gym, and then it creates a little fun atmosphere for these kids to indulge and play around, with certain skills and be taught certain things, and there's different grades they go with too. Not necessarily the age of the person, but how well they're kind of developing and going through these little A, B, and C, and so forth. So it's pretty fun, just little guys, girls and guys, but mostly boys at this time. So yeah, they get to goof off and have a great time.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for Mr. Williams?
Well, true success shows the 166 on the waiting list. I think when you have that many waiting to come into the program, that's always it's a good thing. But hopefully, they don't lose interest by being on the waiting list for too long, and that some new programs can be or classes can be added to, alleviate that waiting list. But sounds like things are going very well, and thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else?
No, sir.
You? Okay. Well,
Thanks, Joel.
again.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, guys.
Yep.
Sorry to fumble around.
You did great.
Have a great day. Next time you come, you'll be a pro. Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 4, consider for approval the following capital policies. Director Higlin.
I think we missed one. Is it at the end report?
Did I what? Oh, yeah, I wrote over it. Okay, my mistake. Back up to item number 3, also
perfect.
Director Higlin, but a 2024 Mandan Park District Annual Report.
Well, thank you, Commissioners. Each year, we try to compile the financial numbers and statistics to kind of show you how the whole 24 fiscal year for the Mandan Park District went, and we're excited. It's going to be another good year for 25, but if we can get the PowerPoint pulled up. There we go. I'm going to go through it rather quick. If you have a question, feel free. I know it was emailed out in advance. We will be going with our portfolio individually through it as the rest of the week, as we know we have portfolio meetings. But overall, as you kind of can see, overall budget of about 15 million, expenses around 15.9, roughly 16 million. We had deficit spending for some of our construction projects that didn't get completed, that were carried over. We actually anticipated a bigger deficit because of the construction projects, but overall, revenue over expenses was quite well for the Park District. As you know, 50% of our revenue is roughly property taxes and state aid. The other 50% comes from all of our charges and fees and services that we charge in the Park District. So roughly about $7.5 million we generate through all of our programming in the district. First department is golf. As you can see, the expenses, 2.2 million operation between Prairie West and Municipal Golf Course. Expenses were up 2.2. As you remember, we approved, I think it was last month, that we approved the transfer of the Vision Fund for the new maintenance building. So we did do that here in 24 and transfer those dollars into the Vision Fund for the new maintenance building for the maintenance department. Quick statistics here, as you kind of can see the trend. Again, just touching on 24, we were at about 55,000 rounds between the two. I believe 32,000 was at Prairie West, and the difference was at Municipal Golf Course. Season passes continue to grow, and that includes corporate passes too. Something that we did different from prior years is we kind of did a 5-year history of all of our wages since COVID. You can see some kind of ups and downs in other departments you're going to see, but the one thing to point out back in 2020 is we were fully operational because it was an outdoor facility when COVID hit. But as you look along the blue line, which is full-time, and then obviously in your screen, orange would be seasonal part-time employees, we're at about a 15 to 17 full-time equivalency, even though we have around 12 seasonal employees out at the golf course throughout the whole thing. And that includes pro shop and the maintenance department. And then you can see the hours we track in our hours. Since we did the pros consultant a couple years ago with facilities and park operations, we started tracking a lot of where our wages were being spent. And obviously a golf course is pretty easy to say where your wages are getting spent. But you'll see in other avenues where dollars are being spent. But you can see the difference between full-time and part-time where all the hours are being utilized. And so we do rely on a lot of seasonal employees. Now, some of the hours between last year to this year, there's about a $2,000 difference, or 2,000 hour difference, excuse me, really has to do with the weather that we have. Sometimes we can open up earlier, we have to open up late. We are open in the fall, maybe a little bit longer than normal. We have college kids who go back earlier than other years. It all is a variable associated with those hours being used. I question going back a couple of slides, when you see the full-time equivalency, in 2024, you can see that we're at about 17 FTEs equivalency. And when you see other areas, the two largest staffing is the after-school care program with Summer Mac, along with the golf course as far as full-time equivalencies. And you'll see the water park is shortly right there next to it. Park operations, as you know, handles all of our facilities, not a lot of revenue-generated facilities for our parks and trails. We did include the rodeo in there, as you see, is a big chunk of the revenue. That has to do with all of the pledges that are coming through for the rodeo arena. Again, that rodeo arena was fully funded through pledges that the Park District took out the loan, and then pledges are coming in making the P&I payment. So that's why you see the large dollar amount of revenue there is mostly because of the rodeo arena. Expenses, as you know, around 1.3, and again, talking about operational and shelter rentals, you can see the shelter rentals kind of up and down. Again, depends on the weather, depends on the type of season that we can go, but shelter rentals continue to be definitely a novelty that we got to continue to grow. Eagles and Legion Park are our only shelters that we rent. With a splash pad, I would see probably a need for birthday parties and events at that facility too. And just for the baseball facility would be rented out for teams that would come in for tournaments or whatever, to have pizza parties or whatever, but definitely would be a need if we put a splash park in. Just quickly, some statistics here. Car Bodies boat ramp renovations at Ferris Field, the baseball complex, which we'll touch on later. We know that there was 26 motor events, the largest we've ever had for weekend events at Dakota Centennial Park. Right around 8,400 attended motorsports events at the racetrack. We had our first college rodeo. BSC brought their event in the fall. They are bringing it back here for 25. New timing system included for our RC track was full operational. It was the first time having a fully operational RC track. We've had some miscellaneous trails as far as a track, but nothing with what we have here today. New wells at soccer, along with hosting the softball tournaments and baseball tournaments. New playground and park improvements at Legion and Rough Rider. Great family participation and residents. As we know, at Rough Rider, we had a public hearing, got their input, got some decisions made out of that. So that was a great opportunity to get us to know some of those residents. As we know, over years, times and homeowners turn over. And as you know, the park operations building opened up, and then we had over 500 pickleball patrons and tennis taking part in Mandan Tennis Center. So a lot of activities going on in those facilities. The seasonal staff, this is kind of what I mentioned earlier, how we track it, and you'll see another slide, but really just breaks down where all of our staff are spending their time, and a majority of it's between softball and baseball. If you look at that, about 60% of our wages are being spent at softball and baseball, and then accordingly throughout. And then we track our full-time. Dustin does a great job trying to track this to understand where we are putting all our resources. You can see Raging Rivers on the right side of the screen. We do have a 1.5 full-time employees that is dedicated there for the summer months. And then you look at the parks, we have 1.5 full-time employees dedicated there too. That's why those numbers are skewed higher. And then the rest of the facilities, all of our maintenance staff are kind of shared accordingly as needed, depends on the type of year that we are able to show. So basically what this graph shows me and to the citizens that are watching this is that we don't have a bunch of people just dedicated to do one job. We're able to spread them out and utilize them, and they're very multi-purpose to be able to know that they can share them throughout the district to benefit not having to have specialized areas. And then again, just some of our full-time and part-time wages that you can compare. Again, in 20, a lot of our wages were kind of cut, not knowing where COVID was going to impact us. But as you see across the line for seasonal employees, gives you a pretty consistent where we're at. And then you see 24 and 25, the big increases as far as wages. We've had to increase our wages almost $3 to $4 an hour to get qualified people, to get people to apply. We'll have anywhere between 6 and 7 positions, and we might get 8 apps. So the wages battle has continued to be, and it's nothing that's any different for parks or the private industry. We're all competing against the same kids applying. And then as you see, the hours that are being utilized, as you saw in golf, was right around 17,000 hours for seasonal employees. We're right around 5,000 to 6,000 hours, again, very seasonal. And then on the full-time side, as you can see, sometimes we have, terminations or resignations that we have to address. Then sometimes we don't rehire. Park operation does a good job knowing that if we have a position in the late fall, we won't bring it on until spring, which then obviously saves hours and expenses for us. Recreation Department, as you know, handles all of our youth and adult sports. And we mentioned in the yellow, our largest program is our summer MAC program and our school year MAC program. We kind of combine it together. But you can see about 1.1 to about 700,000 in expenses. Statistically, as you kind of can see all the way across, very consistent in a lot of the programs on the youth side. Nothing that really stands out that alarms us at this time, but obviously on the adult side. And I think it's a trend throughout the state of North Dakota is adult basketball numbers continue to dwindle. I think it has a lot to do with indoor golf and just the age of people aging out of the program. And then you look at adult volleyball. We know we eliminated the men's program on Thursday nights just because of the amount of teams that we had combined over in Bismarck. But you're just starting to see a downtrend with adult sports just because I think it's just activities of kids getting busier with that. Obviously, there's other things to go do like pickleball, there's indoor golf, other things there's cornhole that's taking place, a lot of the things we didn't have 4 or 5 years ago. So I think you're starting to see the non-impact sports for our adults, become more popular. And then just a reminder, we opened up our app this year. Marketing did that in regards to our app, continue to promote that. And then you see some of our wages throughout. And again, that includes everything from officials all the way to any other seasonal employee that we hire throughout. So very consistent hours and wages that we spend there. Again, total hours, as you see, slightly down. But again, if the programs are down, obviously the usage of hours will be down. And then you see the big jump here in our after-school care program, Summer MAC. We've added sites. As you know, in 25, we'll have space for 2 summer sites with up to 300 children available into it. But you see that steady growth all the way through 24 as our wages grow. We work well with the school district. As you saw Dr. Ritteraff, we're able to open up more and more space. So as you get more kids, the ratio of employees continues to increase. Our waiting lists are way down than they have in the past. So that's a positive out of this. We did budget high for 25, not knowing where we would be at in regards to having 2 summer sites. We'll see where we end up at on that, but we wanted to make sure we were covered in case we had to hire additional staff. And then just total hours, you kind of can see right around 21,000 hours versus 21.9, so pretty much a wash between that. So that's right now, as I kind of wanted to show you, golf had about 17,000 hours of part-time wages. We're at around 21,000 for summer MAC and school year MAC. So that's probably our largest part-time hours worked. Obviously, it's a 9-month after-school care program, and then obviously during the school months, or excuse me, the summer months, 40 hours a week. Then we get into Raging Rivers, as you know. The good thing in 25 is the debt is paid off. We were able to pay that off around 6 years early than we anticipated, which goes back to this program being paid 100% by the funds, but $950 revenue, $902 in expenses. Dave's taken it on here for the last couple of years, operating that, and so things have just continued to be successful. As you see our statistics, slightly down in 25 in total memberships and season passes sold. Combination of things could be the pricing that we had. We do a great job on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, where we do get a big push and then slowly transition the price up as we go. Sometimes that becomes an issue with the timing of it or the pricing that we have in the packaging. But as you see the attendance, it looks like it's a decrease, but we're always right around that 43,000 people that attend it annually. But as we know, windy days, cold days, all those things kind of impact us. We're only open 81 days this year. Typically, we're in that 85 days, depending, of course, on weather, as we cannot control. Just looking at our wages and things that you look at again, 11.5 full-time equivalencies is kind of the average. As you can see, the wages were very heavily dominant in full-time wages compared to seasonal, but continue to grow. Our biggest hurdle at the water park, like you saw over in Bismarck last year, is lifeguards. Just struggling to get the employees to apply. And then when you do get them, you have to pay them a wage that is higher than probably what we feel comfortable with, but we have to make sure we're safe and provide a quality product at the same time, which the higher wages, as we know, this facility had to generate enough revenue to pay the bond, because it's a revenue bond, is not subsidized with tax dollars. So as we have higher wages and expenses, we have to offset that with our fees. And then just hours worked, as we mentioned, 17,000 was roughly golf, 21,000 was summer MAC. We're right around 15,000 to 14,000, in total hours. That's impressive when you're only open roughly 85 days. So we cram almost 15,000 hours in less than 90 days. So we expect a lot of our employees, and we appreciate that what they do. But just to put that into context, we are doing 21,000 over 12 months with MAC, and golf, we're doing 17,000 hours in roughly 8 months. So big undertaking in a short amount of time. Starting Sports Complex, as you know, obviously water and ice don't make a whole lot of money, but it does have expenses associated with it. We had a tough year this year with breakdowns. We're in year 7 of the facility, and as you're running 7 days a week, 12 months out of the year, you start having those minor repairs and hiccups, and we've had some expensive hiccups associated with the heating and cooling system, along with our ice compressor and our pumps associated with that. But that's part of doing business, and we have to plan for it. That's why we have what's called a vision fund, to be able to prepare for those and have reserves to be accordingly. Majority of our revenue comes from ice rent. And then statistically, you can see our ice hours in that 24 to 2,500, so it continues to grow. We do a great job with our ice rental. You see the hockey at 54,000. You got hockey games 22, U-Mary games 17, various hockey games at 150, and hockey camps at 5, along with football at 23,000 people attending. Again, these are just rough estimates and averages, but majority of these football games, club hockey, soccer games, and track meets continue to grow. As you know, in the fall of 25, we'll be moving all soccer up there, and then after that, the spring soccer will be taking place up there to accommodate the needs at the youth complex for all of our youth needs there. And then you throw in track at 15,000, and you throw in gymnastics, as he mentioned here, we got about 10,000. So well over 100,000 people that are coming to that building, and that's just what we control, not the people coming in and going just for practices and dropping off here and there. So definitely a well-used facility. Wages that you see, again, full-time employees is very heavily dominant in there. As you can see, we're right around 3.5 to 4 full-time employees. About a 6 is kind of our equivalent, I guess, average of full-time equivalents. Wages continue to be, going across the table. It's a tough facility when you got 7 days a week. You go until 10, 11 o'clock at night. You got weekends. You got holidays. We try to reward, and they do a great job of rotating the days when you have nights that you get the few days off and then you work days. So we're always creatively trying to schedule our employees up there, but this facility is a little different than all the other ones because it has so many nights and weekends associated with it. And you see the full-time wages, obviously the hours being utilized there versus the seasonal. Again, just kind of a timing thing, and then obviously we added some employees to increase that to 7,100. Then the All Seasons Arena, as you know, we didn't take ownership of it. We've always owned the building, but the operational responsibilities of the All Seasons Arena we didn't take on until September 1. So the revenue and things are slightly down compared to what potentially future years will be. And again, expenses were shared with the school district between January and August. And then after September 1, we extended that a little bit with the school district throughout the end of the year. But 2025 will be a full operational year for the park district. Aquatic Center, again, is a building in the Brave Center that's managed and owned by the school district. We just run the programming, so we don't have any O&M or utilities associated with that facility. As you can see, heavy dominant in charges for our open swim and things of that nature, and then swim lessons would be your second largest with that facility. And again, expenses about 127. So overall, I think our aquatic numbers continue to grow as you kind of see our wages. It kind of goes back to where you see that big trend of trying to get lifeguards to work. We've done a good job of reducing our hours and operations. We close on the weekends now in the summer, just because we cannot get lifeguards. Try to promote that as much as we can at Raging Rivers for our staffing needs because of the short turnaround that we have there. And then overall, just total hours at the Aquatic Center is around 6,800 on average. And you kind of see the breakdown of where everybody's coming. Just daily visits and then just open swim seem to be the two largest. And then our comparison of wages for the entire district. So you look back in 20, we were about $2 million, and all the way to 2025. And again, this includes full-time and seasonal part-time employees. We basically have added $1 million of expenses associated with that. But you talk about all the facilities that we have grown and added to our facility. We're maintaining a lot of the facilities with the same amount of staff. We've just added 2 full-time employees in the last 2 years. We're looking to add another one probably next year, but overall, we've been able to absorb some of that. And then just kind of a breakdown, the last 5 years, how full-time versus part-time. So we were about 1.3 in 20. We're about 1.9, just rounding up. So a slight 600,000 increase associated with that. And that came a lot with adding some staff, salary adjustments, making sure we were being competitive to retain our employees. And we're pretty happy to say that we got a lot of 8 to 12-year employees that are, under the age of 35 that are continuing to work for us. And then obviously we are top heavy with people that have been here for a long time. So it kind of attributes to our managers being able to retain our employees. And as you see, seasonal employees, pretty consistent until about 24. And then you see the big jump we're making in 25 goes back to what we're having to pay. It's no different. Like I mentioned earlier, we're always struggling to find the employees, seasonal employees offering these incentives. But at the bottom, you kind of can see from left to right, we averaged about 64 full-time equivalency to 2024, right around 76. So it definitely talks about a full-time operation. We're at 26. We're going to 27, as we mentioned, for full-time employees. But the seasonal employees that we bring on, the equivalency is about 50. We did about 300 W-2s for seasonal employees. So we definitely have 300 some people that are working many hours that kind of get us to that full-time equivalency. And then again, just to break down on hours, again, a lot of the hours has a lot to do with when we bring people on, when they don't. But you can see full-time is pretty consistent in 23 and 24, and the same thing with our part-time wages. And it just really indicates what we're able to accomplish in a fiscal year with 70 full-time equivalency. And the last slide of just the statistics just gives you kind of a breakdown of where all the wages, is where all the employees are getting brought in. Everything on admin is really related to recreation departments in there, facility managers in there, so we've redistributed some of the employees. We've only added 1 full-time employee in the admin, but we redistribute it. And then you look at Raging Rivers, again, we're at 1.5, now we're at 1.8 as we brought on a new employee that with the All Seasons Arena, so that employee will be shared back and forth there. And then golf, as you see, we added a new employee in 23. Park operations through our pros consultant is right around 1.5 new employees, again, shared up at the Star Sports Complex. And then there's the ASA with the 0.7 is that new employee that's shared between there and the All Seasons Arena. And then just recapping quickly, as you know, Ferris Field, the 2 diamonds that we renovated there, grass fields, hopefully will be ready in 26, potentially late this fall, but we know this spring and summer we want to get good root growth and stabilization. Won't be operable this year, but hopefully in the fall we can maybe start breaking some of it in, but for sure in 26. Youth Baseball Complex, as you know, great partnership with the Mandan Baseball Club, $5 million investment. Again, Diamonds 9 and 10. I'm going to say Diamond 9 is about 90% completed, without the exception of the netting and some concrete work in the alleyways. But Diamond 10 is the field's done, and 11 and 12, everything is done except for the irrigation connections. Boat ramp, as you know, I got my first phone call about when the boat ramp's going to open. On my way here, I was like, new call. We know the boat ramp is an exciting part of our new operations here for the district. Again, dock has been ordered. Hopefully will be delivered in the next 30 to 45 days. We can open the boat ramp up as soon as the river clears out. I heard it opened up today and cleared out with the ice. I'm sure we'll be having to make that decision. We want to do that, but there will not be a dock available until probably 30, 45 days. Golf operations buildings, we started that construction. All we've done in 24 is more of the conceptual designs. We will bid that in, I think it's first part of May. And that is all I have for you. Any questions you have for me?
Thanks, Director Higlin, on that very informative and informational presentation. That slideshow will be on the website?
Yep.
And, okay. Any comments or questions from the board?
I'm going to just make a comment of, I just want to thank Cole for all it's going to sound crazy about how organized everything is, and we're so physically, our finances are so good shape that I really appreciate all he does for us. So I want to thank Cole for all that.
I just
and
want to
he's
add,
got a great staff too.
I appreciate the comment, but we have great managers, we have great accounting staff, and then we have marketing who I think collaboratively we work very well together. And I think it puts out a good product.
Yeah, but you put them together, so thank you.
I would also like to thank our management and our staff, and I would also like to thank our community for its willingness to do partnerships with us on a lot of the projects that we do. Otherwise, we would not be able to do them and still be fiscally responsible.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, let's move on here to item number 4. Consider for approval the following CAPRA policies. Number 1, employee handbook with a records disaster mitigation and recovery policy, promotion policy, policies and procedures manual. We're going to talk about additional information adding to encroachment, disruptive behavior, evidentiary items, and volunteer guide. And lastly, a leadership succession plan. Director Higlin.
So commissioners, as you know, when we agreed to forward and go into this accreditation process, there are things that we do that weren't documented, and that's kind of what we're presenting to you before. Is a lot of these things we had in place, we just over, I guess, our knowledge and experience over the years, we just did what we had to get done and didn't put it in writing. What this CAPRA has allowed us to do is really to pull all the managers together and get this information that we have in our heads and in our file folders and pull it all together into one document, so that whatever happens in the future, whether it's staff changes from administration level all the way down to a park commissioner's level, that we're able to have a document that really spells out every situation. So that's the positive that's been out of this. Before you, as we mentioned, I'll just go through them briefly. I can go through them all, and then we can just make one motion, or we can pull out one if you want to have further discussion. But the records disaster mitigation recovery is we do have things in place that we back up all of our essential records, and we have it through iCloud. We physically and digitally. We have documents that we have to keep for certain types of year per century code. And then it just allows us to be able to assess the damage, implement recovery speeds that can be found in the emergency management plan. So we're basically taking what we have already today, emergency management plan, and pulling it together. And again, this is just more of just a clarification. Jumping ahead to promotions, as you know, we love to promote within. The opportunity allows us to basically just put that in writing that talks about how internal promotions and opportunities will be communicated to employees. We actually just had one where we did an internal job announcement on Friday, and then allowed the internal candidates, as far as anyone interested in a position, to take a potential lateral move or a promotion. So we basically are doing what we say, and allows the opportunity to be able to put more in writing. So those are your handbook ones. In our policies and procedures, again, are always updated annually with the managers. But in yours, it talks about encroachment. We actually have, we've had situations down at Nicola's where we had some encroachment. We had some up at H.A. Kausman Park over the years where, not necessarily up by on purpose, but fences get moved a little bit, sheds get constructed where they think the property line is. And so over the years, we've had to address those, and we work with the neighbors. We understand situations happen over time, or somebody buys a house and has an irrigation line on our property and we don't know, and we'll work with you as best we can until there's a permanent structure. But essentially what we're looking at here is just talks about Century Code. We're taking what's in the Century Code and placing that into our policy, which kind of covers as far as how we would get rid of parkland. What we've done in the past with parkland and encroachments in the past is that we've always had a public hearing. We send a notice out to everybody. We bring them to the meeting. We do not divest land in a way that just doesn't do without public input. And so it just kind of clears up that component, expands. And then along with the inspections that the Park District do, Dustin and his staff do a great job. We actually have a grading scale now where they go through the playground equipment. They're going through all the parks. That's part of that pros consultant that we were doing for the last 2 years, just wasn't written down. So that allows them to go through the parks twice a year to be able to grade things. And so if there are any type of liability issues associated with it, that we're able to address them accordingly. And then the trespassing hours. We worked with Mandan Police Department last year, and now all of our parks have no trespassing after between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. That there was some situations with the Mandan PD where we've had some extracurricular activities after hours where it was stated that the park closes at 11, but doesn't say you can't trespass. So we had to make sure that we changed the language on the signage accordingly so that any type of police officer, cars were getting parked in our parking lots, they wanted to investigate what was going on. Now it gives them that right to go in there. So anytime between 11 at night and 5 a.m., they now can access our parking lots. And you think about all the parking lots that we have between South Mandan, our baseball softball complex, DCP, the golf courses. You talk about the tennis center, the Starring Sports Complex. We have a lot of parking lots, and a lot of extracurricular activities have been taking place. The last component in yellow is just talking about adjacent property owners and the fences and how we will do that. And again, we've always sent the letter. Then if there is some type of removal, we've had to do that where we did have to hire a towing company to remove some extracurricular vehicles that have been parked or stored there, or abandoned vehicles that have gone at times. So we have to just put that in place really to protect the Park District and a policy that can continue to be revolved. Disruptive behavior policy. I know all of us in youth sports, but every organization that's kind of has like bylaws associated with Mandan baseball, with Babe Ruth, Cal Ripken, you got the Mandan U.S. hockey. It basically just kind of took what we had in place with other organizations and put that in here. That basically talks about how to address disruptive behavior and how the proper steps. We have a lot of employees that we have. As I mentioned, as you saw, we had 300 seasonal employees. Give them the opportunities to be able to take appropriate actions and talk about the warning process and the next steps. We haven't had too much of a problem with the Park District, but I do know the clubs specifically have had to address these things individually. So when we have a program being run, we control the crowds and the parents associated with the program. If the clubs are having it, they have their own way of doing that. And if it's not being addressed, then ours would supersede, our behavior policy if nothing's been enforced. The last component talks about is just evidentiary items, basically valuable items at times have been disposed of or stored or lost and placed at our front desk over the years. We've had rings to watches to wallets to you name it, cell phones. We keep them stored in our facilities. We put them in a safe if they have a high value that we think, or we turn them over to Mandan Police Department, and then from there they take care of it. So again, that was just more of a cleanup process for there. The last one is our volunteer management program. Again, all of this management and use of volunteers is what we've done in the past. It just wasn't built into our policies, so I'm not going to go through all of it. It is quite lengthy, but it definitely gives you a summary of all of our youth programs and how we evaluate and we do background checks on all of our volunteers so that we are not putting a kid in jeopardy, but that's just kind of spelled it out in that component. And then the last one, and these are all presented at our admin portfolio with President Meshke, the leadership succession plan. This was the only item that President Meshke had comment on, and I actually thought it was a very valid comment. In the first paragraph, it talked about if the Park Board of Commissioners were to appoint an interim executive director, it could be from the leadership team, is what I had originally put, and then he wanted to add or a citizen at large to continue day-to-day operations of Park District. And I actually liked that. As Bismarck Public Schools, remember Jim Hauser had retired. They had a turnover of a superintendent. They appointed a citizen who they felt was qualified to get him through the interim. And his exact comment was, what happens if you retire and we hire a new director or something happens, and then you're still in the community and you have the ability to maybe get us through 3 or 4 months. So that's why we just put a generic term of citizen at large and not really specifying it. That way that it doesn't tie the hands of the board if something were to happen with the executive director in the future. And then just as far as how we handle positions related to any type of manager, we wanted to reference our employee handbook. And then just as far as how the leadership team will be led by the executive director and the following managers that we have. And again, if positions become vacant, we'll follow the same Halloween practices and the same thing that will happen for myself. We've been doing it for my 26 years, just haven't really put it in writing and haven't had the need to. So I think this is what we've been doing here. And in your packet, you saw all of the standards that were in, the 10 standards, and there's probably 15 standards, or 15 objectives within each standard. It's been a lot of work, and we're getting through it. But just would like your motion to approve the policies and procedures as presented.
Thanks, Director Higlin, and good job. A lot of information there, and I read through all those policy updates, and they all make a lot of sense. And like you said, keep working towards getting that accreditation that we're striving for.
I do have a question on page 15 on disruptive behavior on the excessive noise is how, and maybe I'm asking the attorney too, but how do we sustain an excessive noise from one person to the other? That's kind of that's the only thing I see that I.
Yeah, I think it just gives the interpretation of what you would think at the situation at hand. I mean, we've had guys with air horns, making noises, or a bell we've had over times, or they've been standing behind the home plate when the pitcher's throwing, flashing light. I mean, it's sad that we have to have these conversations, but disruptive noises and or sounds. So I think it was just a generic thing that we've seen in other policies of other park districts. And again, a lot of these standards, if we didn't have it in writing, we kind of carbon copied it from other park districts who have gone through the accreditation process, but doesn't mean that we can't review it each year.
Thank you, Cole.
No, I would make the motion to approve the revisions and policies as presented.
I second.
We have a motion on the table from Commissioner Scott and a second from Commissioner Mutter to approve the policy changes. Roll call vote. Commissioner Mutter,
Aye.
Commissioner Scott.
Aye.
I also vote aye. That motion carries. Item number 5, update on spring facilities and projects.
Well, it's that time of year where we know everybody's getting excited to get outside. We ask everybody to be a little patient because some fields are wet. The frost is still in the ground. We're hoping that in the next 2 to 3 weeks we can hopefully have our golf course open. We had that portfolio meeting this morning. The range is open as we speak. It's kind of hit and miss with the weathers and the temperatures that take place between now and the next 10 days. If everything kind of comes together, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to have Prairie West open in 3 weeks, possibly 4. Again, pending no weather changes. Mandan Municipal Golf Course will probably be at least 1 to 2 weeks behind. Just goes to staffing and getting our staff here in April. So we'll definitely honor all of our memberships at Municipal to come over to Prairie West until Municipal is up and running. Baseball, softball complexes, again, really just as a situation. I'll let Dave talk about the construction update when we get to that. But as far as softball fields, obviously ground is froze, grass is growing, as we know. We can't fire up any irrigation system at any facility just due to the frost. So we just got to be patient there. But as we know, these temperatures are helping us and tremendously be able to get on our facilities a lot earlier. But we know all the high school sports are starting, spring sports, are going to be starting next week. So they're going to be able to get on as best they can. We just can't control what the conditions will be like at that time. Getting into some of the construction projects, I'll tell Dave, as I mentioned, the youth complex. But the boat ramp, as we know, the abutments for the bridge that connects the north and south side of the properties between the nature trail and the boat ramp, the abutments were getting backfilled today as we speak on the north side. The south side is backfilled. The north side is going to get backfilled tomorrow. That bridge is set to be delivered sometime the end of April, first part of May. Again, a 93-foot pedestrian bridge. It's a steel structure with a wooden look to kind of meet the amenities of that area down there. That will be brought in. The vault toilet was scheduled to be here in May. It sounds like it got pushed back to late June or July. Not sure what's going on as far as deliverables on that. As we know, that grant has to be spent by May 31st. So we're trying to figure out other expenses that can be built up in advance, and knowing that we'll just have to probably pay for that $13.8 for the vault toilet. But we have some excess funds available that wouldn't need to be out of that grant. Prairie West Golf Course, as we know, the pro shop, the locker room. I'm trying to get the two confused, getting myself confused with how many projects we got going on here. The actual maintenance building should go to bid, as we mentioned, in May. We will have the construction docks finished this week. But going back to the pro shop, we are looking at expanding the cart parking. So as you walk into the entrance of Prairie West, you got the carts that are parked, right next to the pro shop there, and then you got that grass area to the east. We're looking at trying to find a way that we kind of can open that whole area up that ties in, and we don't have to move carts twice. And we want to have like a return from the parking lot, drop your cart off, get them cleaned, and park them without having to go too far. So that component is going to be maybe an add-on to the project. Shouldn't be very expensive. I think it's going to be very minimal. Maybe some asphalt and a little bit of fencing is all we're looking at, but we want to just see that as an alternate bid. So I just kind of wanted to add that component in there. And then the levy at Mandan Municipal Golf Course, we met last Tuesday at Lower Hart. The core permits have been submitted. The MOU has been signed, so we're good to go with everything with that. Now it's just a wait and see what's going to come back with the permitting. We don't see anything in 25. He will start the construction of that temporary green kind of by 7 tee box. That will start as soon as weather allows. We'll start getting that rolling right away and get that seeded so it has full growth so we are ready for 26. And other than that, that's all we got. Dave?
Commissioners, just a little update on the Mandan baseball project. It's looking good. We had a good start to March, so they can get back to finish the turf. It sounds like by next Friday they should be all wrapped up, or this Friday they should be all wrapped up, hopefully. The netting company comes on the 24th of March to get the whole netting system up. So hopefully by the end of that week we can start using that field. So practice starts on Monday the 17th, and they'll use Diamonds 10 and Memorial Ballpark, which are ready to go right now. So we're excited. If you haven't been down there, go down, check it out. It's gonna look great. And then we've got some additions that we're gonna talk about with the baseball club. Get some pricing for some sod, some more concrete down there, just to kind of when we transition into May. So if we put sod, it'll just clean up the areas really nice, and there won't be any mud messes down there, so hopefully we can get that put in their place too. So, but yeah, everything's looking good.
Good.
And just one thing to add, Vice President Melhoff, on the agenda, I was just looking, I think when I was trying to fit everything on one page with the portfolios, I do not have authorization of monthly bills. So when we get to the staff reports, or we're kind of going through that, let's just make sure we do monthly bills.
Cole, do you mind if I interject something about the boat ramp? I did get a couple of calls from residents down there asking when the signs are going to go up as far as avoiding going down that direction for the residents to have their privacy.
So if you pass the boat ramp as you make the curve on River Drive there is a sign that says no outlet. So there is one there, and we worked with the city as far as street signage because we don't have any controls over the right-of-ways, but that has been communicated to the city. The signs actually for the boat ramps itself as far as trespassing and then what rules you can do, like I think there was no fishing on the dock, sunbathing on the dock. Those should be going up hopefully in the next 30 days or less. But as far as a street one, there is one that says no outlet. So I don't know what specifically sign they would like other than don't drive past the boat ramp with your trailer.
Right. Yeah, maybe that's the clarification is that sign that says no outlet means do not go past this point kind of thing.
And then we did move, so we had the boat ramp sign and it was installed. There was a kind of a miscommunication between Dustin and I, but I was off and Dustin took care of it, but he made the sign perpendicular with the post in the ground to prevent a vehicle coming in. We actually turn that sign now, so it's 45 angled to when you come into the boat ramp. So now when people see the boat ramp, it's right there. But I don't see it being an issue, and if it is, we can definitely add a sign in the future. But it's pretty cut dry how many trees we move down there in the parking lot. When you pull up, you're going to see that it's a boat ramp. Now, people are going to go sightseeing and go see what the neighborhood looks like. I can't control that, but overall, I think it's pretty straightforward where you need to pull in at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so Commissioner staff reports. Anything else, Director Higglin? Mr. Free? Attorney Ruff, you have anything? Commissioner Mutter?
I got a message from Kelly today saying today's the last day for Cal Ripken in midget baseball and also youth volleyball. So if you want to register today, today's the last day. And today's also the first day for T-ball and Pee Wee baseball. So everybody use your apps and register your kids.
Thank you. Commissioner Scott?
Nothing more.
I have no report. Item number 7, authorization of monthly bills.
I would move we approve the monthly bills, payment of the monthly bills.
Second.
A motion from Commissioner Scott and a second from Commissioner Mutter to approve payment of our monthly bills. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. That passes. Future meeting dates for Park Board Commissioners. On March 12th, there's a Park Operations Portfolio meeting at 8 a.m. at the Park Admin Office. The following day, on March 13th, there's a Community Engagement Portfolio meeting at 9 a.m. at the Park Admin Office. April 2nd, a Facilities Portfolio meeting at 8:30 at the Park Admin Office. And our next regular scheduled Park Board meeting for April is April 14th, 2025, 5:30 in this room at City Hall. Any other discussion? Seeking a motion for adjournment.
I'll make the motion adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.